Valentina. Father has always been a greedy bastard, especially for things he knew he couldn't have. And for someone as greedy as him, yet highly ambitious, he was also very, very stupid. As a result of his selfishness and stupidity, I found myself walking down the aisle, dressed in a white dress chosen by a monster just like him by name Cade Villafuentes, the most feared man in Spain and my soon-to-be husband and tormentor. As a kid, I always pictured my wedding to be nothing short of a fairy tale, with my mother standing next to my husband, her eyes tear-stained with emotion and pride as I walked up to them. Except, my mother wasn't here. She was currently locked up in a cave. The same cave where I spent the past 3 days in, dehydrated and famished, counting hours and seconds till this day. The only way for her to get out of there is by marrying him. Father had told me earlier this morning, a silent reminder that the freedom of my mother, the woman he swore to love 23 years ago, depended on me. Cade Villafuentes stood at the altar, dressed in an all-black tux, his hand gathered in the front of his pants as he shot a cold and deadly smile my way that made me shiver in fear. It didn't matter that Cade was a handsome man. It didn't matter that he had a dangerously icy look lurking in his deep sapphire hues, and it certainly didn't matter that the slit that cut over his right eye gave him a rough exterior, made him even sexier. None of that mattered. He was the devil, and I was seconds away from becoming the wife of the devil. Unless everything goes as planned. Father, who had been shooting daggers my way, murmured something to me, which of course I couldn't hear. But as soon as I walked past him, he grabbed my arm. You better fucking behave. One call and that bitch you call mother is death, he warned, his stare empty. Bile shot up my throat as I exchanged a deadly glare with him. If it wasn't for his stupidity, I wouldn't be here. He expected me to save his ass. I didn't ask him to double-cross Villafuentes. Rolling my eyes at my father, I shrugged my arm away from him and continued my journey to what will be my hell. I handed the bouquet to a lady dressed in a pale blue gown, who apparently was my bridesmaid. I have never met her in my life. For a man who doesn't care about weddings, Cade sure went all out. The church was fully decorated with pale blue flowers hanging on the edge of the benches, red carpet bedazzled with gold petals stretching from the entrance of the church right up to the stage where the wedding rite was about to take place. It gave off the impression that he wanted this marriage. But he is Cade fucking Villafuentes. Caring was an alien word in his vocabulary. We are gathered here today to tie in union, two persons who love each other. The voice of the officiating priest tore me out from my daydream, making my gaze land on Cade's deep sapphire eyes. When he tore his gaze fleetingly away from me, I felt a gnarly emotion tugging at my throat. I only heard the priest clear his throat before Cade's gaze was back on me. Do you, Cade Villafuentes, take Valentina Perez to be your lawfully wedded wife, till death do you part? The priest questioned audibly, and a smile crept to my lips at the last part. Cade never took his gaze off me as he took my hand in his and kissed the back. I do, he murmurs in a provocative tone that made my skin itch with a strong desire to be the one to end his godforsaken life. Death is closer than you think. Here's to fucking hope, I murmured inwardly, returning the same sly smile to Cade. Do you, Valentina Perez, take Cade Villafuentes to be your lawfully wedded husband, to love and to cherish, until death do you part? My heart thundered against my ribcage. My hand still entangled in Cade's became sweaty. Although I had something up my sleeve to end my wedding with Cade as soon as possible, I still debated my answer. It took knowing my mother's life depended on me to not bolt back down the aisle. Cade would never forgive me for humiliating him. He would scratch the heavens and the earth to make me pay. He looked like the kind of person who broke women for his pleasure. The more defiant, the more pleasure, and I was his defiant new procurement. In a transient second, my gaze pulled away from Cade when I spotted movement behind him. A surge of hope instantly surrounded me, giving me the bravado needed to push through this and save myself and my mother. Everything was on the right track. I flashed Cade a pearl-white smile. He raised a brow at my reaction. In that instant, I could tell he knew something wasn't right. He knew I was planning something, but never in a million years could he imagine what it was. Valentina, he whispered. It was a silent warning on his part, telling me that there would be repercussions for what I was about to do. What he didn't know was, there would be no repercussions. He will be lying in the pool of his own blood in exactly 15 seconds. I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may now kiss the bride. I had barely given the signal a wink before Cade abruptly snarled his arm around my waist, clashing my thin body against his rock chest. Welcome to hell, wife, he whispered as he lowered himself to kiss me. A loud bang roared through the walls of the church, causing a hiatus to erupt. Screams and cries proceeded as more shots were fired and everyone, myself included, scrambled for coverage. I had barely hid behind a bench when I spotted a hand in a suit being trampled upon by heels. The sound of gunshots ever so present, firing in the same direction. Still, I needed to be sure it was him. I dipped my head and saw his jet black hair that was meticulously held in a man bun spread on the floor. Only then did relief spark through me. I was free. My mother was free. Death has done us part. Because why file for a divorce when you can just kill your husband? Valentina. 5 months later. Mom, I'm off for work, I yelled from the living room, having taken out my Converse from the shoe stand by the door, skipping on one foot as I struggled to put it on. I barely heard her response before I dashed out the door. At 8 in the morning, bits of sweat already darted my forehead as expected given how hot it is in La Parra at this time of the year. It is usually on days like this where I'd make denim shorts and crop tops my best friend, and my long black hair, which had long become a bob cut, currently screams for a haircut as it now rests above my shoulders. After a thorough look at my surroundings and making sure there were no strange faces other than that of my weed and cheap whiskey-induced neighbors, I mounted my bike and headed for Tella's. Tella's was a coffee shop located on a 10-minute ride on my bike, owned by a sweet elderly couple. Tella's has served as a source of income for me and my mom since we fled from Madrid. It all happened as planned. My mother was already waiting for me at the bus station, and as soon as I got there, the bus took off. With my husband now dead and my father lurking around somewhere, probably looking for us, my mother and I started our new life in La Parra. It was rough at first as we didn't have much to eat, but one look at me, Mrs. Tella decided I was the granddaughter she never had and decided to offer me a job. The pay could hardly see us through to the end of the month, but at least it helped put food on the table and paid for other basic necessities. Although since moving to La Parra, my life was slowly taking a turn for the better, I would be a coward if I said there weren't days where Cade's face haunts me. On those days, I would be so anxious that I'd end up creating a mess at work. Other times, I would get orders wrong and then clients would create a scene while I stood there, struggling not to have a panic attack. Mrs. Tella, being so loving, would lead me to the kitchen and try to calm me down. Of course, I haven't told my mom of those incidents. I couldn't bring myself to take away the light that now shone in her eyes. Hola, Mara, I greeted in a thick Spanish accent at the lady outside Tella dressed in faded jeans and rat-visited hoodie. Her hands were calloused with thick dirt gripping her nails. Valentina, you're in early today, she beamed, smiling from ear to ear at me. Of course, I can't miss out on the very first drop of morning brew. I smiled back at her. On Mondays, I made sure to check in earlier than the Tellas and get started brewing coffee, mostly because I wanted a taste of the early morning brew. It was abnormally quiet and empty inside Tella's. Normally, Mrs. Tella would be in the kitchen, fidgeting with kitchen utensils, and would only stop once she heard my voice. But not today. Still, I call out, just for the sake of habit. Mrs. Tella, are you in there? I was met with an even deadlier silence. Shrugging in indifference, I proceeded to walk behind the counter, dropped my cross bag on the chair and picked up my apron before opening the door that leads to the kitchen to get some coffee grounds for brewing. The sight before me made me stop death in my tracks, a heavy rock over my chest as I struggled to breathe. My hand unconsciously finds the wall and I cling to it, hoping for some stability. My hands gripping the wall as tightly began to tremble. My eyes opened wide in terror. There he stood, the man who has been the author of my most traumatic dreams. The man who turned my mother and me into fugitives. A man more ruthless and unforgiving like the devil. He was back from the dead, and he came for me. His broad shoulders casually rested against the cabinet. A bright, serene smile plastered on his face, the slit over his eye ever present. The tattoo covering his muscled arms was clearly visible. He unfolded his arms and began to approach me in cold, calculated steps. My breathing picked up. Tears pickled my eyelids, my feet glued to the spot. His signature smirk daunting me as he drew dangerously closer. He dipped his finger under my chin and forced my gaze to his. Nice to see you again, my little murderer. He whispered dangerously close to my lips, the smell of mint on his breath and cigarettes intoxicating me. Then, he leaned in and brushed his lips against mine, his lips colder than the Serbian winter. Any doubts I had about him being real had suddenly been flushed down the drain. He was too present to just be a figment of my imagination, and his entire being, his cologne, burned my nostrils. Cat got your tongue, my little murderer? You thought you killed me, didn't you? He mocked, walking back to where Mrs. Tella knelt to the ground with a gun pressed against her temple. I was too taken aback by seeing Cade that I'd barely noticed the scared and pleading look she'd been shooting my way. Unbearable guilt washed over me. It was all my fault. I'd brought my bad luck upon her and now, I couldn't utter a single word that would get us out of this situation. Somehow, Cade had resuscitated from death, and that could only mean he was more ruthless than before. Please, don't kill her, Cade. She has nothing to do with all this, I managed to say through a strained breath. Frantically, Mrs. Tella nodded her head, more tears staining her face. Why should I spare her life, Valentina, when you so ruthlessly took mine right after we got married? Cade seized the gun from one of his men, loaded the cartridge and then positioned the gun on her temple. No, I screamed out in fear. Cade, no, please, don't kill her, please, I cried out desperately, looking into his eyes. Fleetingly, I thought I saw consideration lurking in his eyes, but it was gone as soon as I blinked. Then with a smile plastered on his face, Cade pulled the trigger. I could barely hear the loud bang from the gun over my screams and the irking noise ringing in my head, but I saw Mrs. Tella's body drop to the ground, the blood from the side of her head running down her face. Valentina, you killed her, I whispered in a shaky tone. My feet finally found some stability and I began to walk towards Mrs. Tella's lifeless body. Villafuentes stepped before me, pointing the same gun he used to end the poor Mrs. Tella's life at me. You fucking bastard. You killed an innocent woman. She had nothing to do with this. How can you be so cruel? I screamed at him, not giving a damn that anyone could walk in at any moment. I kicked and jabbed against his chest, but all my effort left him unfazed. If anything, he let out a mocking laughter, the sound of it roaring through the room. You brought this upon yourself, Perez. You should know better. I am the devil. I can't be killed. Did you really think a mere bullet would end my life? I got even. You tried to kill me, so I killed someone you hold dear to heart. Now, we can start afresh. Villafuentes is still standing close to me. The smell of sandalwood and male sweat intoxicated my nostrils. Let's go, Perez. I'm taking you back to Madrid next to me, where you belong. He grabbed my arm and began to lead me towards the back door, where I assume they got in. His man had already started fitting the lifeless body of Mrs. Tella in a bag. While one struggled to throw the bag over his shoulder, the other rid the floor of her blood. Like hell I will go with you. I would rather die than be anywhere near you, you psychopathic killer. I wriggled my hand out of Villafuentes' hold, but this man was stronger than 1,000 Michael powers combined. Again, he laughed. The urge to grab the gun he pointed at me a few seconds ago and shove it down his throat was too violent for my brain to contain. You don't have a say in this. Now start moving before I put you over my shoulder, he ordered. There was a hint of amusement in his voice, and just to step on his last nerve, I wrapped my arms under my chest, making my breasts puff over the noodle-strapped crop top I wore. In a transient second, Villafuentes' gaze drops to my cleavage. He heaved out a huge sigh and took his bottom lip between his teeth, making desire pool in the pit of my stomach. Move, Valentina. I will not ask again, he ordered, and when I didn't move an inch, Villafuentes grabbed me by the hair and pulled me as he headed for the back door. You son of a bitch. You're hurting me, I yelled out, trying to free my short black hair from his strong hold. I asked you to move, little murderer. Don't make me knock you unconscious. You know I will do it. Villafuentes stopped just right outside the back door. He tucked his gun in the back of his trousers as he spoke. I'm not going with you. I stood my ground. It was pointless fighting with Villafuentes, but I still had to try. Stall him until the first clients show up to the coffee shop, and when they don't find me at the counter, it will raise suspicions. And when Mara confirms that I had indeed checked into work, it will come looking for me. So, even though it means Villafuentes beating the shit out of me, I will not give up without a fight. Don't give me ideas, Perez. Now, move. He spoke sternly, his face void of any expression. Again, I folded my arm and rested my weight on one foot. I pursed my lips, shooting sassy stares at him. Cade rubs the spot between his brows in frustration. In a swift move, the gun that was in the back of his pocket was now on my temple. I said move it, damn it. He yelled. Still, I didn't budge. Exasperated by my little act, Cade threw me over his shoulders as though I weighed nothing more than a leaf. I kicked my feet, struggling for a release. His hand that spanked my butt should not have made my thighs drip, but it did, and a little moan slipped past my lips, which thankfully was conceded by the curse words I threw at him. You sick bastard. Let go of me. Help, somebody, help me. I cried out, still kicking my feet and jabbing my hands against Cade's firm backside. Yell all you want, my little murderer, but you are coming with me. Cade took slow steps towards his black Range Rover Velar with tinted windows. He puts me on the ground, then fishes out his phone from his pocket and scrolls through it before turning it to me. On the screen is a picture of my mother, passed out and tied in the back of a trunk. My heart dropped to my chest. I swear to God if you dash. SHHHHH. Cade shuts me off, tucking his phone back into his pants. She's alive, for now, but I will not hesitate to end her life should you throw another tantrum. You will get in the car and shut your trap hole throughout the journey back to Madrid. Got that? He warns. Rage filled my vision. I may have failed once, but not this time. I will kill this man. When I rolled my eyes, Cade opened the car door for me. Once tucked in, he closed the door and walked to the other side. Then it dawned on me. How come no one had peered to find out the reason for my screams? Not even Mara, whom I had met outside. Did Villafuentes have something to do with that too? Did he kill all the inhabitants of La Parra just to get to me? Oh, fuck. What have I done? My thoughts were cut short by the slamming of the other side door. Cade puts on his seatbelt. To my gang hanger, he speaks to a man in the front seat I only just noticed. He turns in my direction and smiles at me. I stared back at him and shot him a smirk. Yes, I will not fail to kill him this time.